Hi, I'm Dan Barker, and welcome to Freethought Matters, a production of the Freedom from Religion Foundation.
And I'm Annie Laurie Gaylor. Dan and I are co-presidents of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, which works to keep state and church separate and to educate the public about the views of atheists and agnostics.
Some people, like you, Annie Laurie, never did believe in a God, but many of us, like me, we grew up in religion and we had to break free.
And like you, Dan, some were actually ordained ministers before you saw the light. Our guest today, Jerry DeWitt, is a former Louisiana preacher who took that path to freethought. His book is called Hope After Faith, An Ex-Pastor's Journey from Belief to Atheism.
Jerry DeWitt used to believe in faith healing, and now he has healed himself of his faith.
So Jerry, welcome to Freethought Matters.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So you were a Louisiana preacher in two, what were they, Pentecostal churches? How long did you preach in these?
So I pastored one church solid for 5 years, another church for about 2 years, but I was in the ministry since I was 16, 17 years of age. Wow. So I was in the ministry for 25 years.
Wow. And was it Pentecostal, evangelical?
Mostly Pentecostal in the beginning. It was hardcore, what we would call clothesline Pentecostalism.
What does that mean?
Well, that means you wouldn't be able to do this.
Oh, wear a beard?
Which is why I have this shaggy thing, right? You wouldn't be able to do this.
Oh, that's an act of rebellion?
That's very much rebellion. And the women would not be able to cut their hair. The men wore long sleeves. There was no shorts, no television. You know, pretty much like living on Gilligan's Island.
It was DeRidder. The city was DeRidder, Louisiana.
Correct.
Which is probably not a hotbed of liberalism.
No, it's not. It's about 60% Pentecostals and then maybe 35% Baptist and then everyone else.
Now, before we talk about how you got into the Pentecostal ordination, what is Pentecostalism? So
Pentecostalism comes from the word Pentecost, which means 40th day. And so if you go all the way back to the early 1900s, it was a fad that broke out. People were trying to find a way to be closer to God and to prove, that's the important part, to prove that they were closer to God, and they stumbled across this idea of speaking in other tongues. And it caught on. So in the beginning, you could have been Baptist, Methodist, Catholic, whatever, just attend the right revival, speak in other tongues, and you were technically Pentecostal.
So Jimmy Swaggart was out of that whole tradition, right?
Yes.
The piano player, preacher who
I love
fell
everything
into
about it.
that big scandal. But
yeah.
You said you got saved at one of his...
I got saved at one of his camp meetings. Yeah, he would have an annual youth camp meeting, and a very influential person in my life invited me to go to the camp meeting whenever I was 16 years old. And only reason I went was because I could not tell her no. She had been my 4th grade teacher, and I loved her too much to tell her no. And I went and was absolutely mesmerized. I'd grown up around church and in church, but it was small little country churches. This was the big times. This was the big show. 8,000 people, you know, that was a mega church at the time.
And you wanted to be like that, you thought?
Oh, absolutely. He was the most powerful person in the world, at least for those 8,000 people. And everything about it, what really struck me was that there was a mission. When you walked into the sanctuary, there was all types of language about mission. There were even plaques up on the wall talking about missions, about saving the world. And I was just a lost 16-year-old trying to find direction. And this seemed like it.
Same thing to me. I was 15 when I felt I was a true believer like you, and I presume you actually really believed it all.
Really, really, really believed it.
And
yeah.
I felt what I was convinced was the call to the ministry and was go into the world and preach the gospel.
That's right.
The Great Commission, right?
That's right.
The mission to have a purpose because the world was going to end. Did you think the world was ending?
Absolutely.
Huh.
Absolutely.
Well, that must have been, I would think that would have been kind of frightening or upsetting.
I was kind of excited about it because I thought I'd have a place in the new kingdom. I thought I'd be on the right hand or something like that. And there's something that a lot of atheists and agnostics miss about, especially if they've never believed, that they miss about religion, and it's that it is exciting. Whenever you go to the movies, you go in, say, for an early matinee, and it's still light outside, and you watch a really, really great movie, and you get really captivated by it, and you walk out, and now it's dark, and you have this weird sense of having to kind of, recalibrate back into reality because you've been in this other world. When you believe like Dan and I did, you never leave the movie. You're always in the center of this big production, so it's really exciting.
So you were not faking. Some people would say that we were like pretending. But
That's probably what ticked me off the most. As soon as my story, came out, was either I had believed wrong the whole time or I didn't believe at all. And neither of those accusations are fair. I truly, truly believed. I believed I saw visions. I believed I saw healings. I believed it was the voice of God that I heard. I believed I had seen Jesus himself. I believed I'd touched his hands. I believed.
Now, you said that you became ordained as a teenager. How did that happen?
Well, so fortunately for me, I started off in a denomination, an independent denomination, if that's possible, that did not force seminary. Matter of fact, their experience with seminary was if you go to seminary, you come back more liberal. So they actually discouraged seminary. So it was could you get up and do the job? When I went and told my pastor at the time, I feel I'm called to preach, his exact reply was, we'll see. That was his answer. And so a couple of weeks later, I was sitting in the congregation, sitting next to my girlfriend, doing a normal service, and all of a sudden he just says, in a few minutes, Brother DeWitt's going to get up and give us a sermonette. And that was news to me. I had no idea. And so I raised my hand like I was in, school, and he laughed and he said, yes, Brother DeWitt. I said, can I go in the back and pray for a few minutes? And he said, sure, but hurry up. You're up, And so I went in the back, I opened my Bible, and here's the kind of hooks that get you. On the way to the prayer room, this thought started coming to me about the different types of seeds, the different types of ground that they were planted in. Well, when I walked into that prayer room and opened my Bible, of course, it fell open to that particular verse.
it's a miracle.
It was a miracle. It was confirmation, And so I came back, and the first time that I ever got behind the pulpit, I had the gift of gab. I was able to preach, and that's all I needed.
The gift of gab. And now Pentecostalism can be quite entertaining, can it not?
It's the most entertaining. It's actually shaped modern Christianity. Everyone follows their lead because they're the most successful at producing an interesting service.
I took Annie Laurie to a Pentecostal church in Indiana once, just for the experience.
The experience of watching her watch it?
And she turned to me and she said, that preacher's got high blood pressure. Because, there's this energy. There's
With his waving his hanky and strutting around and
it
getting
gets
all
hot.
red-faced. And
So you were like that. You were like the,
Absolutely, yeah. Especially in the beginning. As I learned more and as I developed more of my own persona, I calmed down a little bit, but being loud's kind of expected and fun.
Now, you didn't support yourself through the ministry solely, right? Is that right?
Off and on, yeah. I think I stopped counting at 28 side jobs.
Wow.
Because I would take a revival, and the revival could last over the weekend, or it could last for 3 months. You could be in the same area for a long time. But when I run out of a place to preach, I'd go get a job.
So revival's like every night of the week?
Every night.
In the same, like in a church or a tent or something?
In the same church, yeah. Usually in the church. I didn't do any tent revivals. I didn't get to have that fun.
I actually did a couple of tent revivals.
Did you? I'm so jealous.
I didn't know that.
I played the piano in a tent revival. It was in a cornfield.
What?
And the grand piano, the upright piano fell over backwards into the... I was playing it so hard.
It was a downright shame.
It was a
right?
downright shame, not
Wow,
upright.
that's awesome.
But same idea. We were
Yeah.
the people praising God and raising their hands and feeling the Spirit and crying and
Right.
asking for healing and all of that.
Right. I was in the ministry long enough that I saw people get lazy. When I first started evangelizing, you would have service every night for weeks and weeks and weeks. By the time I left the ministry, it got more fashionable to maybe do it like Wednesday through Sunday.
They had other things to do,
People had
maybe.
other things to do.
So you were guest pastoring, or
Yes. For most of the years. But then, at different times, I would become an associate pastor where I would stay with one particular church, and I was the assistant. And then at the end of my ministry, I pastored 2 different churches as the pastor.
So Jerry, what happened?
So the first thing that happened really, really early on. I was absolutely in love with God. I just wanted more of God, and I was trying to find ways to have more of God. I thought it was through the Bible. And as I studied the Bible, I began to see that there were some issues. And the main issue for me was the doctrine of eternal damnation.
Well, good for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Because there's a lot of believers who don't think it through,
Yeah.
who don't realize that they're fine with condemning their friends and relatives and people who've never heard of Jesus to everlasting torture.
I see it as there's a love for people and there's a love for truth. And even though what you love may not be the truth, you have this love for what you think is the truth. I was just perfectly balanced. I loved the truth, so I continued to study and look. But I also loved people, so it mattered to me what I thought the truth was saying. Some people They love truth more than they love people. And so it takes them in a very, very, very hard, they'll just say, well, I'm just going to work really hard to save everybody because, 99.9% of all humanity is going to hell.
And when you say truth, I think you're putting that in quotation marks.
Absolutely, very much
They love
so.
their dogma better than people.
That's right. They love whatever they perceive to be true at that time. And I was constantly growing.
But this says something about you, because a lot of believers, they don't ever question the dogma. You're just supposed to accept it. Even if hell sounds kind of ugly and horrible to you,
Right.
accept it. It's what the Bible says, so who am I to judge?
Right.
But you didn't think that way.
I for some reason, I was introspective enough that I could see myself. And so when I would stand up in front of the congregation and I would teach on hell, that's in very early, 17 years of age, talking about hell, I didn't think that I deserved to go there. And I knew a lot about the people that I was preaching to. I didn't think they deserved to go there. So I wanted to know the truth of who goes there and what is that about. And that started a habit of really investigating.
And then what was the next thing? It was prayer, wasn't it?
Well, so what ended it, what really broke the ice 25 years later, was needing to pray for someone and feeling as if that if I did, that it would encourage them in a way that I thought would set them up for failure. And so I couldn't pray for them. And that was when I knew that I had crossed a line.
And you tell a story in your book about this woman who called you. Was that an auto accident or something?
Yeah, her brother had been in a very, very serious accident, and she called asking her, pastor to pray. And I couldn't, because it sounded like he was going to die. And I felt like if I prayed with her and tried to encourage her and wasn't realistic about it, encouraging but realistic, that would set her on a path of doubt. And so I had not enjoyed my path of doubt. I enjoy where it's taken me now, but I did not enjoy going through the process.
So we're going to take a break now and come back. After we come back, I want to hear what happened after you lost your faith.
And also, we're going to, I think, be treated to a little bit of Atheistic Pentecostalism, a sample of your preaching.
So hold on to your seats. We're talking with Jerry DeWitt, a former Louisiana Pentecostal preacher who saw the light and is now an atheist.
Hi, I'm Ron Reagan, an unabashed atheist, and I'm alarmed by the intrusions of religion into our secular government. That's why I'm asking you to support the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the nation's largest and most effective association of atheists and agnostics, working to keep state and church separate, just like our founding fathers intended. Please support the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Ron Reagan, lifelong atheist, not afraid of burning in hell.
I can honestly say that I don't remember ever believing in a God. I grew up on the standard American angels and bedtime prayers and stories of Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny. Believing in magical beings who bring sweets and treasures was fun when I was 4. I've never really struggled with the question of my personal religion or lack thereof. Not that I didn't ponder the question of God, but it didn't seem reasonable to go through the mental contortions necessary to buy into the stories, let alone learn and follow the arbitrary and objectively discriminatory rules of any organized religion. I find religion unnecessary and generally a waste of time at best. Most often, religion is the excuse for the worst human behavior possible. The damage wrought by belief in myths is written throughout human history, and the toll it continues to take on individuals and society as a whole is clear and present today. There are moments in history where people are defined by whether or not they go along to get along or whether they stand up and resist. Now is one of those times. I know that I'm not alone in rejecting fairy tales, but I know a lot of people find embracing the tag of atheist unsettling. Maybe agnostic is a term with less baggage, and frankly, I'm comfortable with either. They both describe people who embrace reason and reject magical thinking. But now is not a time to split hairs over definitions. We face ever more aggressive efforts of religious zealots to claw their way into places of influence, our secular schools, our bedrooms, and even our bodies. Reasonable people are obligated to engage them, or we risk being drowned out by the fundamentalists who insist, due to their theological obsession, that only they know what's best for all of us. We can't allow their ideological crusade to strip us of our constitutional rights or reverse the social progress that so many have fought and died for. My name is Christina DeLayden, and I'm an out-of-the-closet atheist.
And welcome back to Freethought Matters. I'm Dan Barker with Annie Laurie Gaylor. We're co-presidents of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. And we're continuing our fun conversation with Jerry DeWitt, a former Louisiana Pentecostal preacher who saw the light and discovered there is hope after faith, which is the title of his book about his story. So you were in the process of telling us what happened, and after you realized internally
Right.
that you didn't believe anymore, then externally what happened?
So, real quick, to get to there, people always ask, what happened? People expect there to be something horrible, like, God let your dog get backed over or something, and now you're mad. It wasn't like that. The best way I can describe it is that every time I asked a question that was outside of my theology, it was kind of like I was inadvertently bumping the knob on the stove, turning the heat down of my faith, and I didn't know it. And so over 25 years, it was just getting cooler and cooler to the point of getting past lukewarm, to use everyone's analogy. And so I was slowly working my way through these theological differences. When the person called and wanted me to pray for them, and I realized I could not, mainly because I did not want to start them on a journey of doubt, because I wasn't enjoying where I was at. That moment made me realize I had to accept this, that I did not believe.
That you were way past that point.
I was way past. I was much further down the road than what I had internalized up till that moment. But I'd always been taught to be honest. And so I knew I needed to be honest about that. And so I was honest with myself. And so then what began to happen was I began to look for support. I began to see, is there anybody else out there that's done this really crazy thing?
And
there was.
and who was that?
Yeah, who might that have been? So in the same guest bathroom, because the call came in for prayer very late at night, and so not to interrupt the rest of the family, in that same guest bathroom, I went and got my laptop, opened it up, and began to Google non-believing ministers, things like that. Didn't even really have the word atheist solid in my mind. Lo and behold, there's Dan Barker. And I remembered coming across one of your books years ago, years before that, and kind of saw it and just, like, no. La, 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 la.
So that was the book Godless, I think.
Probably so. Yeah, probably
that
so.
tells the story.
So I reached out, I got a phone number, and I called the office, and lo and behold, he called me back.
I remember that day.
Yeah.
That was fun. It was. You got a great accent. I remember that.
Oh, well, thank you. I don't hear it anymore. So there was help.
And
there
you
were people.
called just about the same time that the Clergy Project.
That's right.
The Clergy Project was officially March of 2011, and
Right,
I think
and this was October. This was
When you
heading,
called?
Septemberish around there, I would
somewhere in there.
And we should explain the Clergy Project is
Sure.
an online support for ministers like yourself
That's right.
who get caught in the pulpit,
That's right.
who are losing their faith, changing their minds, and then what do they do?
Because you think the first thing I was thinking was self-sabotage, because I was working, for the local government. They had hired me as the preacher, basically, as the mayor's chief of staff, to kind of be a liaison with the religious community. I, had nice congregations. We finally were getting where we'd wanted to be for life. And it's like, really? This is what you're going to do now?
And then you lost that job because...
That's right, because my atheism got out. It was on the internet, bouncing around just a little bit in the very beginning.
That picture of you with Dawkins, that was...
The picture of me with Dawkins, that's exactly right. Me and my son, we went to a convention in Houston, Texas in October, snuck over there, lied about why I was going, why I was going to be in Houston, and grabbed a picture with Dawkins, and I posted it on Facebook thinking no one would know anything about it. I had like less than 200 friends on Facebook at the time. And my, at the time, 80-year-old great aunt, she figured it out.
She was looking at Facebook?
She was looking at Facebook. She was communicating with me via Facebook and figured it all out, and
Then the cat was out of the bag.
started a prayer chain.
And your life unraveled in a sense.
Completely fell apart. I was fired from a completely secular job because the people that had the contracts were deeply religious, or where I had come from. We lost almost all friends, almost all family, and I come from a really large family. Everything, all the way down to bankruptcy and death threats.
I remember
Yeah,
we passed the hat at the Clergy Project.
Yes.
And raised a few $100 so you could make a car payment or something. I remember
Yeah, that's
that.
right. That's exactly right.
Because you were like way down.
My son and I literally studied on how to live in the car. Yeah.
So what a consequence to follow your conscience.
Yeah.
I mean, you obviously could not go back to the ministry.
No.
This was an intellectual decision, and damn the consequences.
That's right. And to be fair, so I don't look like I was braver than what I am, I had given so much of my life to the ministry and to that community. There was a part of me that was very naive and thought, if anybody can get away with this, I can. Because I had just sacrificed my time, my family's time, our money. You know, I had made a lot of sacrifices. And I thought, you know, yeah, this would be a bump, but they love me and I love them. And, you know, we'll figure this out.
You know what Samson told Saul? Obedience is better than
That's
sacrifice.
Right. That's exactly right.
So, but then the story gets kind of fun because you started accepting speaking engagements
That's
at
right.
humanist groups and Freethought groups around the country.
Became famous and tall and handsome.
And one of the
all worked
fun, as a miracle, one of the fun things that you did it at our convention in Portland the next year, is you give this, you kind of go into your preacher voice to
I
give
did my
it.
preacher thing.
Only it's a free thought message.
That's right. That's right.
And instead of saying, "Can I get an amen?" like you used to say in church, you said,
"Can I get a Darwin?"
Well, let's look at one of those clips from, where was this, in Arkansas?
This was in Arkansas, Little Rock, Arkansas.
Well, I've got just a small moment to tell you that this has been such a grand adventure. I found myself down in such a low place. I was all alone, trapped. I'm going to tell you, brother. I found myself trapped and alone, feeling as if there was absolutely no hope. I'd gone near and far. I thought I'd looked around. There was so much that I thought I understood, but little did I know that my mind was completely filled with all of the wrong things. Religion had completely baptized me in falsehoods. But as religion began to dry me off and I began to shake myself completely free, not partially free, not just a little free, but as I began to get myself completely free, I began to feel something firm under my feet. I had always stepped around in mushy places trying to justify things that were hard to explain, but at this moment, whenever I've caused all the dust to be spread out of my feet, I realized I was standing on a rock. Yes, my friends, there was a rock, and it was a rock of reason. I want you to understand that today you're changing the future, you're making life better, and there is hope after faith. Can I get a Darwin?
Can I get a Darwin?
Thank you.
I saw you a little smirk in your face there when you were doing that, because you were having so much fun.
It is fun, and I think it's entertaining, and I think we have emotional lives, and as long as our emotional lives are reined in by reason, we should enjoy.
But more than that, it proves that you were the real thing. That's the kind of preacher you were, you know.
Yeah, that was the tricky part, was being able to do that and still prove that you're the real thing.
Yeah.
Because people see it as an act sometimes.
And then,
actually, Dawkins told me once, he said, "I enjoyed your preacher act," and it kind of broke my heart a little.
Yeah,
bit.
because
I was like, I wasn't acting.
But in a sense, it's a tightrope before an atheist audience to pull that off, because they don't want any.
That's right. They don't want the real thing, right?
But at least you're showing that here's what I used to do, and it is. There's something emotive about the feelings when you hear a preacher up there saying something. It hits you, no matter what they're saying.
Yeah, we're culturally appreciative of it in certain situations. Some people, though, have received enough trauma from the religious experience that they will have to leave the room. I've had people tell me that really bothered me. So keeps you humble.
So we've left everyone hanging about what happened in your life.
Yeah.
Everything kind of crumbled. People turned on you. Now where are you?
Well, so now, I'm loved by millions. No, I had to rebuild. I had to start over. And so I'm doing very well now. I have a consulting business. I do life coaching using the experience that I had in the ministry. I just kind of pull out all that wasn't true and apply the experience and the education that I had that was true and significant. And so I've slowly rebuilt my life. It's been 7 years, and it's taken the full 7 years, because I basically did away with my entire adult life and started over, but I think I'm in a good place.
And when you look back on this journey, how do you feel about it?
Well, there are parts of me, I always try to be honest, there are parts of me that wish I could have done things a little differently, mainly because of how it affected my son and my ex-wife, the people closest to me, because there's a lot of repercussions. But I had no choice. This was true for me. This was, people will look at it and think that I'm on the other side of the fence. I've never felt that way, like I joined, the opposing force. This is my journey. This is my life of self-expression. And so I feel like this is where my journey was taking me. This is what honesty and love for humanity has produced in my life.
I
So
know
I'm
you
very
tried
excited.
really, really hard for years, but eventually your marriage couldn't survive.
Right, but and to be fair, it wasn't over theology. It wasn't belief versus non-belief. It was public life versus a desire for not having a public life, more than anything.
Did she see herself as like a minister's wife? That was her role in the world?
No.
No?
Bless her heart.
Oh.
She didn't like that.
She didn't like. She
So
didn't
the
like the publicity.
The
to start
publicity about
with.
your leaving religion would also have
Was
been
even worse.
Yeah.
That's right. It was one thing to be married to a hero, and you don't want to do that because you don't want the public life. But then to be married to the zero makes it even harder.
Well, you're not a zero.
I know. Tell everyone I'm not a zero. Yeah. No.
So if you had any words for someone listening, we only have about 2 minutes left, somebody who's Pentecostal or coming out of that tradition to understand your journey, what would you say?
Well, to understand my journey, I would first say, believe it or not, I've been where you're at. I know you don't think that I have because we believe two different things, but I assure you, there's this great book called Hope After Faith. You can read it. You'll see that I've been there. And my advice for that person would be, love yourself first. And I know that sounds very contrary to what we were taught to do, but give it a try. Love yourself first and see where that takes you. Because in all of the universe and in all of time and space, as far as we know, you are the only you that exists. And you're worth giving yourself a chance for. Love yourself first and see where it takes you.
Wow.
Very good advice for everybody.
So
For everybody.
Once a preacher, always a preacher.
Once a preacher, always a preacher. I
guess.
pastor all day long.
Because you went into the ministry because you wanted truth and you wanted to help
That's right.
people. And like me, that's why you left the ministry.
That's right.
Because you still wanted to do what was real and meaningful.
The same
too.
thing that brought me in is the same thing that took me out, and it was a love for people.
Yeah,
There's a love for
amazing.
the truth.
Amazing. Well, your story parallels a lot of stories of the other former and active clergy in the Clergy Project, who right now there's almost 1,000 of them, and you were one of the early people in that,
That's
that
right.
group.
Yeah. There's a
So-
lot of us out there, and there'll be more as time goes by.
You have a webpage, Jerry DeWitt,
JerryDeWitt.net.
JerryDeWitt.net. Well, thank you, Jerry. It's a fun story.
Yes, thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for traveling here to be on Freethought Matters.
Well, thank you all very much for having me. Thank you for Freedom from Religion and for all the love and support you've given me for the last 7 years. It's made the difference.
And thank you for watching Freethought Matters.
Because Freethought matters.